Can you believe we're already at the end of season 4?
I can't, and I won't.
Seems like just yesterday.
Yeah, it was a good season.
Yeah. So I think the plan for today is we're going to go through each of our top 5 movies or episodes for season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll talk about like any big takeaways or, kind of things that stood out to us about the season on the whole. We'll talk about kind of a weird situation that I had recently that sort of relates back to horror movies and maybe how it's changing the way that we look at life.
Yeah.
And then also a quick bit about horror movies that we're excited about in the future.
Yeah. That sounds bueno, my friend.
Cool. Well, do you want to start with your number 5 movie for season 4?
So my number 5 favorite is Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Nice.
It's my childhood fave.
I knew that would be on your list.
I know. I had it. I have to do it. It's just, yet again, we just went over this episode, but it has to be there just for my history with the movie.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest. It's not the, best B type horror movie, but it's just one of my favorites. So. Yeah,
I have to say, it was a super creative movie, and there were a lot of scenes that were very memorable, and it's one that has, a very devoted fan base that has stuck with it over time. And so, yeah, I'm glad that was one that we got to watch, and I think that, for horror movie discussions in general, is one that should be included.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, my number 5 was the 2018 version of Halloween.
Oh, okay.
And as we talked about in the episode about it, it was definitely not a perfect movie by any means. And there were definitely some scenes that didn't make a lot of sense, and it wasn't the best acting, but it was still just a really fun movie to watch. Yeah. Like being in a theater and seeing a new high-budget slasher movie with an original story in 2018, it was fun. I really, really enjoyed that. I got to see it with friends twice in the theater, and it was like an equally enjoyable experience both times. And so I don't know that I would necessarily feel the same way about it a year or two from now, but as something that came out during season 4 that we both got to go watch in the theater, it was a cool experience. It was fun, and that's something that will definitely stand out in my memory.
Yeah, actually, that's my number 4.
Oh, nice.
And it's kind of same thing. I thought it was interesting the way that they came back with the movie. Yeah. As in, like, this is continuation after the first Halloween. I mean, I thought that was a cool idea, but it was also kind of like, that's all you got. I mean, like, you can't go any further. I mean, you could, but the Halloweens were, getting out of control. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. It definitely brought back a lot of the feelings that you would get when you watch that, feels like fall and all this. And, they were able to continue that story, I thought, pretty well. A lot better than the technical...
Than the original sequels? Yeah.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, for sure. My number 4 was A Nightmare on Elm Street. And, as we talked about, that was the first time I'd seen it. And so I just really love the creativity of it. And I know that I'm late to the party with that, but I thought it was one of the more creative stories of the slashers that we watched. And I really like what they did with like blurring the dream world and the awake world. And I thought that Freddy was just such a unique horror villain. It took that like established slasher genre, but introduced some mystery and kind of created a more original character on top of it that I really liked.
Yeah, it was definitely exciting to be able to do some of those classics that we did.
Yeah, and to kind of go back through them all relatively close together was nice, because it really, in my memory, they kind of blur together. And so having that like easy comparison between them was cool.
Yeah. So my third favorite was The Descent.
Nice.
Which might be a little shocker, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed when we watched that movie.
Yeah.
I had owned it before, or like we had owned it. It was like my parents, but I never really watched it as in depth as I did for the podcast.
Yeah.
And when I did, I was like, this is actually like a really interesting story. Like, I like the idea of like being in pitch black and you're in a cave. Not only are you dealing with darkness, which makes you claustrophobic, can make you claustrophobic, you're also dealing with being in a freaking cave with, those creatures. But anyway, so that was my third favorite.
Yeah, so I actually had that as my number 2, but my number 2 and number 3 are kind of on par, so I'll just talk about it now. Mm-hmm. I also love The Descent. I thought it was so good, and one thing that stood out to me a lot about it was how the scary elements of the story just kept building. Mm-hmm. So it starts off, and they're stuck, in this giant cave, and they don't, know if they'll be able to find a way out. And that's scary on its own, just from the survival aspect. But then you introduce those creatures on top of it, and that adds like a whole additional level of horror.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have them kind of turning on each other and not being sure who they can trust. And then one of the characters going a little bit crazy. And so it's like this whole just building crazy story where you really don't know who you can trust and you really don't ever feel safe, and it's in the dark and it's underground and it's claustrophobic, and it was such a well done horror movie, and it did such a good job of evoking all the feelings that a horror movie tries to evoke. And I thought the special effects were great. It was just all around awesome. And I'm a sucker for endings, and so I really, really liked the ending of that one.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was definitely, because we both watched, they called it, the British ending.
Yes, yeah. So we got to see the real ending of it, not which was even more disturbing. So I liked it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what then was your number 2?
So my number 2 was actually the whole series of Haunting of Hill House. I was gonna give a specific episode, but I decided no, the whole TV series was my favorite. Probably like episode 9. Maybe the top one for me, but anyways,
what did you like about episode 9?
Just the build up. You could feel, so the whole series was coming, like you felt it peaking, like it was just building and building and building, and finally it peaked at episode 9. Like with the action, you're figuring out with the childhood. I mean, it's just all coming together, I guess, at episode 9. Like it's all what's going on then. I don't know. I think it was just my favorite out of there, just the build up, and then not that the other episodes aren't good, but
9 definitely felt like a lot of payoff from all the mysteries that have been building throughout the show.
Oh, okay, so now this is. But that being said, I'm doing the whole series because that's easily grew into one of my all-time favorite TV shows. So I'm pretty happy with that.
So what's funny is, my number 3 was Nell's episode of The Haunting of Hill House. Yeah. So I did pick a specific episode. 5?
I
don't remember.
I think it was.
I should probably look it up. But I just thought it was so good. And it's the one where you kind of get the whole history of Nell and the bent neck lady, and then you find out what happened when she went back to the house. Mm-hmm. And then there's that creepy scene where she's dancing and she thinks she's with other people, but then they have like the camera shots where she's not. It was just so good. And I'm actually right now about 2/3 of the way through The Haunting of Hill House, the book that you got me for Christmas.
Oh, really?
And that is just making me appreciate the series even more. From the book, the movie did a lot of like exact recreations, but the series just took so many little things from the book and just ran with it and gave it significance and built it out in a way that was just so far beyond the original story. Like it's making me appreciate the creativity of it even more. And that episode especially, I think, was the first one that just like blew my mind. And I thought it was so good. And I thought that it was also interesting because it was like right in the middle of the season, but it still was like a huge payoff to something that had been built up with, which is like what happened to Nell when she went back to the house. And then you still had like half the season left to go to try and make sense of everything from that perspective. So just the way that it was placed and the way that it was shot and the acting and everything about it, I thought was just really, really good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wager
we got it. We both
that we have the same number 1.
Yeah.
Which was probably something that we would have both put number 1 or close to number 1 on our list just of horror movies in general before we even started doing this podcast.
Yeah, if we did like a series podcast overview of like our number one, this would probably be mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that movie is 28 Days Later.
Absolutely.
I was so glad it held up.
I actually was kind of worried too. Like I was worried when we were watching it. It's like, kind of, because we're trying to pay attention a little bit more than, for doing this for the podcast and all the stuff you read about it and the research that's involved. And it's like, God, I hope I don't read something that ruins this movie.
Yeah.
But it definitely held up. You got the fast zombies. The story was just amazing. I don't know. It was great.
Yeah. And I think that it's a good movie, not just a good horror movie. And, and same for The Haunting of Hill House, the series. But, like, the sound and music and cinematography of it, the story, the acting, like, all of that totally lived up to how fondly I remembered it. But also the intensity of it. Like, even having seen it a bunch of times and knowing what was coming and knowing how all of the scenes ended, it still created that sense of, like, tension. And I think it did a lot of things really well. It did a lot of things that other movies and series have copied. And also just, sort of the directing and the color and the way they did the shots and the music. I just love it. And I'm so happy that we got a chance to revisit it and talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Yep. We'll need to do 28 Weeks Later soon.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I haven't seen that one in a really long time.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah. Well, cool. So did you have any, like, big takeaways from season 4? Like, anything that stood out to you just in general about horror movies or as a genre or anything else?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway I had was that, like, I'm totally cool with doing TV show horror movies.
Yeah.
Or horror TV shows. Like, for the podcast, at least. Like, I'm definitely down for that. I mean, I was also, like... I guess another takeaway is that a lot of sequels are bad.
Yeah.
Just not great. And it seems like maybe they're kind of going after the money, which, hey, do you. That's great. Get that money. But at the same time, it's like, is the second one not nearly as good because the first one was so good or what,
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think that would be my takeaways.
Yeah. One of mine was definitely that it's hard to make a good slasher sequel. Because those were pretty rough going through. But the other thing that kind of stood out to me in retrospect was just thinking about The Haunting of Hill House and thinking about Bird Box. Whereas I feel like both were really popular and both were Netflix originals and both were really high budget and well made. But we watched Haunting of Hill House based on recommendations from a lot of friends and people that listen to the podcast. And Bird Box, we really just kind of mostly heard about because of advertising.
Yeah.
And I think that we both were really, really into The Haunting of Hill House, and we both felt like Bird Box was really overrated. So I just want to say thank you to the listeners because they got our backs. They're they're recommending the good stuff, and I think that's really cool. Like, to have been able to be a part of a community that kind of gets it the way that we do, is just kind of neat. So thanks everybody.
Good job having good taste in movies and podcasts.
Exactly. Yeah, I like how you snuck that in there.
Yep.
Yeah, so then I guess the next thing to talk about was I have a situation that I want to bounce off you.
Okay.
And we talk a lot when we watch these movies about, like, maybe lessons that you would learn from it. Like, hey, call the police. Don't go back into the house. Stay away from, if you think the place is haunted, get out of there. Stuff like that. And I have maybe a real-life example of how I might have put some of that to use. Okay. But I still feel conflicted about it, and I don't know if I did the right thing, and I want to know your opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I will for sure tell you when you're wrong.
I know. That's why I wanted to ask you. Sometimes you tell me I'm wrong even when I'm not. But
Yeah, that's never happened, but go on.
Yeah. So, as you know, last weekend, Sarah and I took a long weekend. We went on a little vacation. We went to Albuquerque because we found super cheap flights.
Wrong for doing that. See? Sorry.
Never take your wife on a long weekend. Yeah, but So we went to Albuquerque with the intention of doing a lot of hiking and seeing a lot of the cool stuff like the Petroglyph National Monument and Tent Rocks and all that stuff. And Bandelier, like every place we were going to go was closed because the government shut down. So that sucked. But we still found some good hiking and got to see snow, which I was forgetting what it looked like. So that was nice.
Yeah.
But we had an Airbnb. And the Airbnb was described as like a quaint downtown studio apartment that was newly renovated and walking distance from lots of cool stuff.
Okay.
What it actually was the top half of a house that had probably been foreclosed on and was being renovated. No. But the downstairs just like reeked of cat piss.
Oh, God. Could you smell it in your place?
Not as much from the top, but like walking through it was rough. And there was like a used like dirty toothbrush on the counter in the downstairs bathroom.
Yeah.
And there were like a bunch of tools and stuff where it looked like people were working on it, but like the doors didn't fit on the hinges right. So you could totally just see through the edges of all the doors, even though they were locked.
Oh, God.
And the ceilings were super low, and I like hit my head more than once on the way in. And there was like this temporary door over the stairwell to the upstairs. So it wasn't originally an apartment, it was just the upstairs of the house that they had kind of like slapped together as a thing that they could try and rent out. They put in like a little kitchen upstairs, but it was a very homemade kitchen, and it was just a super awkward place. And to be fair, they had tried to like make it nice. They'd put some decorations and stuff up there, but it was also in a super sketchy area. So there were like no streetlights, and we were supposed to park behind it, and there was this like shed with a bunch of old stuff in it that was like overgrown, that was like the background of every horror movie ever. Like when we pulled into this little courtyard behind it, I immediately could only think of Texas Chainsaw, because that was the vibe that this place had. Like no light. There's this old broken down car that we had to like angle between it and like the edge of the house to park. And then the thing that really got me was we went inside, and that door to the upstairs that we got the key to from like the lockbox outside was open. There was another key with a keychain on it in it that somebody had just like forgotten.
Oh.
So our instructions were, like use the key that you get from the lockbox to go in, unlock the door at the end of the hall and go upstairs. Well, someone else had already obviously been there, and it was just open. And so we didn't know, like there was nobody to meet us. It was just like this house. There was one door downstairs that was locked, but the light was on the other side, so we didn't know if there was somebody there. Sarah was immediately like, I don't feel safe here. And I'm like, all right, we're going to get a hotel.
Yeah.
And we just left.
Right.
Just like didn't question it, just got out.
100%, yeah.
Do you think that's crazy?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Couple things. First off, I want to know, I have a question.
Okay.
Did you leave a review on there saying...
So we're still trying to figure out what to do on that.
You absolutely should.
So the thing was, as I looked through because originally we were going to dispute it with Airbnb and try to get our money back. But really there wasn't anything in the ad that was straight up wrong. It was just there was a lot of stuff omitted. And there were some reviews on it, but all the reviews just talked about it being close to downtown, which, as we found out, there's not actually that much or anything to do in downtown.
Right. It's like if it says about Bartlesville.
Right, exactly.
It's like there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would still leave a review, like an honest review.
Yeah.
About it, like just saying like what the stuff that they omitted, because you want to save people from
that. Yeah, for sure.
But no, you absolutely did the 100% correct thing. I would have absolutely got out of there.
Okay. And the reason I debated on it was just like, there wasn't anything I could pinpoint to be like, this thing is the one thing that's completely unacceptable that makes this justified.
Right.
But at the same time, it was just a bad feel. You know what I mean? Like it was not a safe feeling at all.
I mean, the whole like no lights, the fact that there was another key in there, like who was there, and they just left the key, so copy could have been made.
Yeah.
Was there homeless people living downstairs? Like,
it sure smelled like it.
Yeah. I mean, it smelled terrible. And also, like, you gotta think too, you had your wife with you.
Yes.
Like, if it was a band trip, then that probably would have been like a mansion.
It would have been nicer than where we normally stay.
Right. And so another thing, you were on vacation.
Yeah.
You want to enjoy, even though it was a quick trip, you want to enjoy those things. You don't want to have to worry about, like, can I sleep here at night?
Mm-hmm.
And is all my stuff going to smell like cat piss when I leave?
Yeah.
And, what's going to get stolen? Who's coming up here?
Yeah, exactly. And like, plus, we both had our work laptops. And so, like, leaving that when clearly other people have access to the place was a concern. And but
was the hotel room much more expensive than Airbnb?
It wasn't. Thankfully we were able to get one through Hotwire, and because it was like night of, we got it super cheap, and then just stayed in that same one. So we got a pretty good deal.
Oh God, yeah, I would definitely leave a review on that. But you did the right thing.
Well, yeah, and I think that what it got me thinking about was just like, if I was watching myself in a movie and I saw the person walking into that situation, I wouldn't be at all surprised if an axe murderer came out of one of those closets.
Yeah.
Or if it ended up like really bad for the person. And I'd be like, they should have never gone in there. And so I feel like I needed to apply that same level of critique and judgment to my own life.
Well, and what you should also do is watch, read the Albuquerque news for the next like couple months and see if anyone dies in that residence. Because you don't know.
Or I could look at like back issues and see if someone already died in that residence.
That's a good point.
Because that would explain the smell.
It's also kind of shady to say like a studio apartment when it's the upstairs of a house.
Exactly.
Like, that's not what a studio apartment, at least not in my opinion.
Right.
Otherwise, you can call a bedroom a studio apartment.
Exactly.
A grill or a little oven in there or something.
Yeah. So
it's the finest of pizza ovens.
Yeah.
Or toaster ovens.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah, you did the right thing.
Anyway, just saying, if you would judge a character in a horror movie for doing it, you probably shouldn't do it.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah. So now that we've resolved that, switching gears back to movies.
Yeah.
What are some upcoming horror movies that you're excited about?
So I put on the list some movies that are coming out in 2019. Mm-hmm. We probably honestly won't review all of them, but you never know. So the Pet Sematary 2 or another Pet Sematary is coming out in 2019.
Yes.
With the way that the Haunting of Hill House and the original or the It remake and all that, like I'm interested to see if this one turns out well or not. So I'm looking forward to watching that. It 2.
Oh yeah,
the second It.
Yeah, I forgot that was this year.
Yeah, it's supposed to be coming out. I mean, the first one, we really enjoyed. So I figured It 2 would be another one that we go to the movie theater to watch to review.
Oh yeah.
There's a movie coming out, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah, I've heard about that one.
Yeah. So did you ever read those books?
No, I didn't.
So it was kind of like it's just scary stories, but it was one I read, like, I think it was probably elementary school. Mm-hmm. Like, it was almost like they're scary, but not something that younger people can't read.
Yeah,
so I'm just interested to see if it has anything like that. And then supposedly there's a Are You Afraid of the Dark?
That's exactly what I was about to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's like no information about it.
No, and it could totally be, fake, but I like to believe that it is.
That I'm very intrigued by, just to see what direction they go with it. Like, is it going to be kind of, more of like a kid speed type horror movie? Or is it going to be like a scary horror movie? And is it going to have any of the original characters in it? Yeah, exactly.
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Then the last one I have here is a movie called 3 from Hell. It's the sequel to The Devil's Rejects.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
Which, so The Devil's Rejects is technically a sequel of House of a Thousand Corpses. So I'm interested to see how that goes, because I really liked Devil's Rejects, and I hope it turns out good. So.
Yeah, for sure. So you covered most of the ones I wanted to talk about, but one I want to go back to is Pet Sematary. I actually just finished the book.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And I am so excited. The book was great. And there are a ton of things from it that I'm really excited to see, like how they get translated to the big screen. Mm-hmm. And especially after seeing it and how well they did with that, I'm very excited about Pet Sematary. I think that the source material is really good and that there's a lot to draw from there. And if it's sort of that same, like well-made big screen experience, I think it's going to be really fun, but also like potentially scarring. You might experience long-term trauma. So I'm wildly excited about that.
Do you know if this one's supposed to be like more like the book, like kind of thing, or is this supposed to be like a sequel?
I believe that this is like a reboot.
Okay.
I believe it's a remake, but I'll verify that. But based on the trailer that I saw, it looked very consistent with the book. And then one other movie that I'm kind of excited about is called Velvet Buzzsaw.
Ooh.
And Jake Gyllenhaal's in it, and I think it comes out tomorrow, actually, or sometime in the next week. It said early February. But yeah, excited to see that. And it's supposed to be super gory, but it's also like kind of satirical. So I really don't know what that means. And I'm excited to find out, because I feel like it's been a while since we've seen like a modern kind of like slasher gory type movie.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see where they go with it and how they do it. But I really like Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor, and I know that these aren't necessarily horror movies, but he's in one called Prisoners and another called Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
That are both really good, really intense movies that I think most people that like horror movies or like the rush or the thrill of it would also like. So yeah.
Yeah, this says a series of paintings by an unknown artist are discovered. A supernatural force enacts revenge on those who have allowed their greed to get in the way of art. That's what describes that movie. That's interesting.
It has potential, but we'll see where it goes. So yeah. But yeah, lots of things to look forward to. I would think a few of those that we've talked about we'll definitely probably try and do an episode about while they're still in theaters.
Yeah.
And then some others we'll, figure out as we go along. But
yep.
Cool.
Also, we're now on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, you got that set up.
Just the recordings. We're slowly getting all the episodes up there. And we might just start from like here on out kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're putting out episodes on YouTube if you ever... And it's just the audio for now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's definitely an easier way if you just get on there and subscribe to that. You can... Yeah. Either way, it's just... I don't know. For me, like I prefer listening to them on YouTube because I know YouTube so well. Mm-hmm. You know, but that's my way.
Yeah, a lot of people use YouTube for music now, which I didn't really realize, but that's a pretty common thing. So now we've got our stuff there too.
Yep. I figure might as well test it out.
Yep.
It's just the horrific on there.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So yeah, this is the end of season 4. We're getting ready to hit the ground running with season 5 next week. We'll be talking about the 1988 remake of the movie The Blob. And we are now available on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and basically anywhere else that you get podcasts. And we have a website that is thehorrific.com. And we have a Facebook page. And you should check us out. Talk to us on all of those. I challenge you. Leave reviews. Send us stuff. Send us recommendations. Send us what you like or don't like about the podcast. And we are excited to just keep going.
Keep it going. We're not here to stop, you bunch of jerks.
Exactly. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.